hopefully get a guy tomorrow who's a sports expert.
Okay.
Just telling you that, like, we're expert going out at 15% down. Like,
yeah. I work tomorrow.
Oh, you are?
I
yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And it's going to next week's we're going to start seeing.
Okay.
So if he comes in and we air that on Friday, we could do that thing again.
We could do like a longer form kind of thing. We can just,
It
kind
would
of
be like a sit down discussion.
So we'll do that. What I did with you, we can do that Friday. Okay. Let me see if I'm going to get him, and then we'll discuss.
So, anyways, Johnny's
okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably.
Probably. That sounds good.
Yes,
please. Talk to me about it.
Here's the script.
Were there any retakes from weather?
So the story is about the chimney last week.
Refresh my memory.
This was a case in Spalding County. A couple that was they were adopted.
Okay.
It was the adoption case. One child had multiple kids in the house. When the older kids, I think, were all. But anyways, the other kids were fine. They were okay. They fed everything. But one kid, he was a sibling.
Okay.
They would like through side sometimes. Shoes, sleeping clothes that were big for him. Nourished. Like a lot in the pantry.
And all for this one sibling who was adopted.
For this one sibling, and the other siblings were other siblings of this, but they were fine.
Okay.
But him, they thought he was like a problem.
Okay.
He was not sure. He was the watch. He was short. He was 10 years old. Found him. Neighbor found him. It's tiny. It's terrible.
Yes, yes.
When the cops, they thought she estimated he was like 6. But he was that emaciated. He was emaciated, over 2 bags, very scared. The cops showed up and he was like, I don't want to go back in there.
Yeah.
So really bad situation. They definitely they nailed the windows. He couldn't get out. Food. There was an anecdote that people came to the area. But he brought him to the out of the water and go in there. There was some testimony that came out about spat. They didn't make him take baths like really full baths. They're staying here, we're going to cut off your limbs.
Awful, yeah.
It's an awful situation. So, this is testimony. There was court testimony for one day, and the next day, both the parents put it. Interesting. It's kind of open to the facts because there was a counselor when he was in school that noticed this kid. And he did something. There were multiple reports to the fact.
Defenses he had.
Department of Family and Social Services. They were working with adoption agency. Well, for families. flag. His mother was saying, I was like, I don't know. And him and his parents actually pulled out. Still got this kid.
And they were like just trying to place him.
They're trying to place him. Part of it is like trying to get to his story. Family said, especially COVID, it's less false negatives.
Yes.
There's just less options when you send kids. Out. And also, less options for that. Well, and there's pressure that I think they want to keep siblings. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell. Basically, red flag went away. Feedbacks looked into the claims. His counsel testified. They basically said that was what's fine.
Okay.
One of the tricky things about this is Johnny's in a lot of defense.
Sure.
So he can use that.
Yes, yes.
Can't get records on these cases
Right.
unless the kids are
That makes sense.
this fits on it. So we've well into this, speed background. We've done other stories. This story about way he died.
Yeah.
Barrow's case in about
Yes.
yeah.
No.
But they had other kids. I take it back. So 10 years old, 37 pounds. There was testimony in there from nurses.
Okay.
Stuff about how he emaciated, how hospital life he
Yeah.
He's putting plums in there. Save the plums.
Yeah.
They beat him with belts, cords. The judge sentenced him to
Excellent job.
If we start shining, does somebody come and
No, that's why we
pat us?
have you sit down and we take a look. And if I see you shine,
Okay.
we do a little tap, 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 tap.
We have very limited space.
And you do such a beautiful job, Portia. You're so uplifting and
I am just
love
honored
your
that you are
spirit.
watching.
Oh, you are
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Beautiful.
I'm going to just knock out just a little bit of shine right there, okay?
For right now, yeah, so she's in a area.
You sit tight, and I'm just going to absorb oil and
Thank
shine.
you.
that we
I
don't
hate
see
to be
into-
shining on camera.
No, listen, but that's what makes the skin look so good. Ain't nobody tell, not nary close to what your age is because of that good skin, okay? And that just takes
Thank
that
you.
off, all
Thank
right?
you.
And this is all good.
Don't let me show a braid.
Understand? Listen, I understand. I understand what you think is under this. I get it. So here's what's going to happen. The show will, as you know, starts with me setting up and talking about what we're doing today. That's going to be on this camera. You're not on camera for that until after you hear the music, you see me looking at the cards to see if the cards are upside down, and then I'm going to do a little short intro, and then welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Okay.
Okay? Just remember, especially with you, there's one that's going. There's, especially with you, the show cannot be too hyper Atlanta.
Right.
because it airs in San Francisco and Oakland, it airs in Orlando, and it streams nationally on Fox Soul. So you don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm not interested, I can't relate because I'm not in Atlanta. So the women you're talking to are just across the globe, essentially.
Do you know Joteka Edie?
Absolutely, she was on the show.
I was going to recommend her, but I'm having her come in for an event in September. Can I mention that?
Please.
Okay.
Oh, wait, well.
September, so that's why I was asking about Aaron, because this is May.
So, yes, but I
won't get political.
I wouldn't say, no, and I wouldn't narrow down to a date because the show's going to air over and over again.
Right, okay.
So if it reruns again next year.
Right, I'll just say, like,
that she's
I'm
coming.
excited about my biggest event is having Joteka.
Yeah.
Like
that works.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we're about to get started. So I'm gonna have you all.
So yeah, that's fine, but that's okay. We just try to keep from
already
dating
had
it. Yeah, we had her just before the election.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She is.
And can you hear me in control? Cam, everything sounds okay? I do. And Brandy, you hear me okay? Okay. Best color of the week. Hands down, best color of the month.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's so sad. So it's like he was basically being bullied by his own siblings.
You know, it's always the little things that can make or break your flying experience. The parking, the TSA line, the turbulence. But behind the scenes, there's always this team of really hardworking people trying to make sure everything goes smoothly long before takeoff. And the women you're about to meet are remarkable leaders in the aviation industry. Myrna White made history during her career at the world's busiest airport right here in Atlanta. And Tasha Finez went from working at a commercial airline to flying with the Obamas on a private jet. Despite some turbulence, both women soared to reach new heights in a male-dominated industry. And they have some really valuable lessons to share. So let's get ready for takeoff with two game-changing sisters in the aviation industry today on Porsche. Hello and welcome to the show. You know, traveling brings a lot of joy to a lot of people, and Myrna White was instrumental in the expanding of runways at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. What started as a position that was supposed to last just 18 months evolved into this 32-year-long career at the world's busiest airport. Myrna recently retired as the assistant general manager, but her legacy literally lives on at the airport, and I am honored to have Myrna White here on the show.
Well, thank you, Portia. I'm just so excited to be here with you.
I'm glad. You know, your story is just, you were first in so many spaces in the aviation industry, and I think people think, oh, aviation, the aviators, the pilots, but there's so many people doing so many critical roles behind the scenes, not even in the cockpit or the cabin, right? And you were one of them. Let's talk about what you started out doing and how you ended up as an assistant general manager.
You know, my story is incredible. When I think about it myself, I get excited. But I'm from a small town in middle Georgia called Dublin. We call it the Big D. And I always loved watching airplanes fly over. Now, we did not have an airport in Dublin. So I would just lie in the grass and watch the planes fly over.
Wow.
And I thought one day I'm going to be a flight attendant. So I actually did apply to be a flight attendant after I graduated from the University of Georgia, but back then there were very strict weight requirements, and I've always been a little healthy.
Yes.
Fluffy.
I say a beautiful curvy girl.
Thank
yes,
you,
but
thank
yeah,
you.
you're right. It was different. Yeah, right. Different
absolutely.
show, different day, but yeah.
But one of my mantras is you have to believe in the power of the pivot, because one thing you think is for you might not be. And sometimes that other road is the one that is going to take you to a higher altitude. So,
And no is always probably God kind of closing a door for something better. So what did you end up doing when you got that no? How did you then make your way into the industry?
I decided I wanted to write. As a professional. I've always loved English, made A's throughout my schooling. And so I thought I wanted to be a journalist, a broadcast journalist, which you do so well.
Oh, thank
But
you.
I had an internship in Tallahassee that, after that fast pace, showed me that that's not really what I wanted to do, which is why I always encourage students to take an internship. It's so important to really get in that field and have that practical experience.
Right, so you can decide maybe yay, maybe nay.
Exactly, exactly.
So there was another nay, but you said, I still am
I did
interested.
another
There's still a little
pivot.
girl who was looking at
Yes.
planes fly over Dublin.
But first, I did have that journalism career, but it was in print rather than broadcast. And after about 3 years, I thought, oh, I'm a little tired of that. I need to make another change. So that's when I entered public affairs. And after a few years, a position became available at the airport. And like most people, you think about the pilots, the flight attendants. I did not realize there was like a world of different careers available at the airport.
Absolutely.
So I was hired as a public information specialist to help the community understand the importance of the fifth runway. Now, I'm really dating myself, but when I started, there were only 4 runways at the airport. And the airport administration had plans to build a 5th runway. But with any good leadership, you understand that public awareness is important.
Right, because there's going to be some pushback. There's going to be some, what are you doing with the land, and
Exactly.
why is this, and how's it going to cost, and who's going to pay for it? So your job was partially helping people understand what was going to happen.
Yes.
Let's talk about the lessons learned, because obviously there's a 5th runway, been there for a long time, so it happens. Let's talk about the lessons learned in that space and in that part of your career.
One of the biggest lessons I learned is that you always have to be transparent. Integrity is critically important. Even if you're sharing news that the public won't like, you need to be able to be open with them. One of the biggest compliments I ever got from an elected official was a councilman in a neighboring jurisdiction who said, Myrna, I may not always like what you have to tell me, but I know you're going to be honest with me. And that has been my mantra.
And your work in this industry, you've been awarded and recognized by mayors, by council members, by people in the community. Talk to me about how you end up going from public affairs to assistant GM, because I feel like there are some valuable lessons to be learned for women trying to work their way in corporate settings.
Absolutely. I've always believed that you want to make a space better after you have been in that space than the way you found it. So when I started at the airport, there was no government affairs division. There was no community engagement division. And I understood that those roles were critically important because the stakeholders around the airport are some of our biggest advocates. So it's important that we partner with them. And so I also knew that I had to work hard, have a strong work ethic.
And and pardon the interruption, but in a male-dominated industry, you really have to learn how to stand out and sometimes deal with double standards. Just quickly before we go to break, one particular lesson that you may want to share about the importance of showing up and being present and not intimidated.
Well, I was often early on when I finally made it to senior staff, because I did work hard to, get promoted along the way. Sometimes I was the only female in the room. And we are known to be polite and graceful, especially Southern women. I had to learn to speak up for myself, otherwise it would be looked at as a weakness.
Right,
So
understood.
being assertive without being disagreeable is a lesson that I learned.
And one of the many lessons that you have to share from your career. And up next, you're going to meet Tasha Finesse. She went from airline flight attendant to the provider of top-tier services for elite clientele in the skies. More on her journey from commercial cabin to private cabin right after the break. Ah, so you like the show, huh? Then let's connect on social media. Check us out on Facebook, X, and Instagram at Portia TV Show.
So we're streaming this, and I noticed that live now moved the Vatican bug. Do you want us to take down our full bug? I did put it in the lower third. Like the Vatican. Yeah, it's for sure.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it can't be covered.
All right. Now that we all shine free.
All right, Portia, all set to go?
All set to go. Thank you. All set to go? You
Yes.
comfortable? Okay.
Sit by.
Thanks so much for coming back to the table. We are celebrating sisters who have reached new heights in the aviation industry. Tasha Finesse started her career as a commercial airline flight attendant right out of high school, and now she works as a private flight attendant and made history as the first Black woman to own an aviation consulting company. Tasha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So nice to have you in this space. I'm curious, just what made you decide you wanted to be a flight attendant right out of high school too?
Yes. So my family and I, we traveled for years, and I told my mom that I wanted to be a flight attendant. I saw the lady on board the flight, and I said, she's so pretty. I want to do whatever it is that she does. My mom was like, baby, there's more to it than just being pretty. It's serving food and meals and things like that. So
A little bit of psychology, a little bit of sociology, a little bit of personal interactions.
Yeah, and that's kind of what started my journey. I took a chance on myself, went down, interviewed for a company, a commercial company, $200 in my pocket, and was hoping that I just made it through the process.
Wow.
God willing, everything worked in his favor, and they were putting me in housing. They provided me with meal and a place to stay, so it worked out. It was destined for me.
And then the training begins.
Absolutely.
So at what point did you decide to go from the commercial space? How long did you do the commercial
I did
place?
commercial for about 10 years.
10 years. So that's a lot of flying customers.
Oh, it is. Yes, it is. It's a lot of flying and meeting all types of crazy people at times, but it was some challenges, but nevertheless, I enjoyed it.
What made you decide to go in a private space?
Well, actually, this was foreign territory. I didn't even know that this world existed, and I stumbled across it when I saw that the basketball teams had private flight attendants.
Right.
And I said, well, how do I get into that? How do I cross over into that market? I didn't have anyone to show me the ropes of everything.
We got to pause because we just passed by one of your most famous clients,
Yes.
President Barack Obama.
That is correct.
Tell me about that gig, if you would.
Well, his company have reached out to us and asked to charter a jet for us and asked me to be his flight attendant on board the flight.
What's that like?
Oh, it was amazing. He's such an honorable man. Him, his family, his wife, the children, they're all
But even
great.
for you personally, I mean, to somebody, because this is the point when you had your own business doing this as well?
Yes, yes. They had actually, they had actually booked me before with a company. And then after I had left that company, they reached out again and said, we like her, we want to have her on board. We absolutely love what she does and how she caters to us. So they
That is more than flattering,
Absolutely,
right?
yes,
To have anybody,
absolutely.
right? I mean, we're
Yes.
all human, but when
Yes.
someone reaches out,
personally.
yeah, that makes a difference. What does that say, and what's the teachable moment there about how to make meaningful professional connections with people? What have you learned in that space?
Definitely leaving a lasting impression, going above and beyond, showing them what you're capable of. These spaces weren't necessarily always designed for us, so if you have to get out there and sell your best self, then that's what you need to do, and I think that's what I did.
And how do you do that in such a niche market? Like, how did you learn how to do the marketing part of this? The things that you did not know how to do when you were working for another airline and had to learn it in a private space and then for your own company.
So there was no blueprint. I had to create my own blueprint. I figured it out. I mimicked things that I saw other flight attendants doing. I took a little piece of, the training that they had and things that they were doing and just encompassed it into what I'm doing today.
Yeah. The representation part of this means a lot to you. I mean, you did this in a commercial space for about 10 years and still say that the representation of black and brown girls wasn't there. What are you hoping that people will learn from you?
Well, I hope that in addition to the clients that I've flown, my legacy that I would like to leave is that I empower them and inspire them to go out and take charge and, do what they need to do to become successful as a flight attendant or pilot or any capacity of aviation.
And you're doing some work with your organization.
Yes, with my nonprofit that I will be launching here soon. That's called Million Miles of Melanin. I'm excited about that.
Million Miles of Melanin.
Yes.
Tell me more.
So what that is a nonprofit that's basically geared towards empowering people of color, letting them know what services that are available for the world of aviation that they may not know about.
Yeah, Myrna touched on that too. There are lots of other...
There's so many other avenues that people can take.
Tell me the top 3 that people aren't even thinking about.
So you have avionics mechanics, you have what Myrna does, facilitator of the airport, and then you also have groundskeepers, so people that actually facilitate and make sure that everything is running smoothly on the ground.
And I know a lot of people are talking about some of the things that have gone wrong in this industry, but you feel like there were a lot of things going right. This is still a viable career.
Oh,
People are always going to be flying.
Absolutely, right? We're always going to be flying. There's always going to be a need for flight attendants, pilots, avionics, and everything. Yes.
Really important information here. I guess give me an example of of a challenge that you had either in the flight space or as in the business owner space, the problem and how you solved it in less than a minute.
Oh, in less than a minute? Oh my gosh, you're putting the pressure on now. I would say there was a time when I was on board an aircraft and the particular client did not want me to be on the aircraft. And
Was there an expressed reason why?
They had expressed that they did not want a flight attendant on board the aircraft. So just getting on board, selling myself, going above and beyond, and making sure that I had everything that they wanted on board. I think that it made an impression on them to cross over.
I'm stuck at the part where they didn't want a flight attendant, so they just wanted to be by themselves.
Yes, they wanted They wanted to serve themselves and do everything on their own.
Understood.
Yes,
Okay.
which sometimes that does occasionally happen, but when they charter a flight, they usually include the flight attendant with the cost.
Right. Yeah. And just in case some stuff pops off,
You
I
want somebody for
who knows how
safety
this
reasons,
yes,
right?
Indeed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Understood. Understood. Lots of interesting lessons
Yes.
there. All right. I want you to stick around because after the break, Myrna is coming back to the conversation, and both women are going to share their advice for women who want to soar in the aviation industry. We'll be right back.
This is what she talked to us earlier about? Well, that's it. That was the premise of us talking. Okay, gotcha. Didn't they talk about code? That's how she phrased it. Okay. Victor? How are you? Okay, if you roll, ask Elijah? Yes. News 64. NTG. Sure. Thank you. That's all about it.
I thank you for coming back to the table with these two incredible trailblazers in the aviation industry. We have just a few minutes left. So, Myrna, I want to bring you back into the conversation for that expertise. 3 decades in this industry and retiring as assistant general manager of the world's busiest airport. Your advice for the women watching and working in this industry, trying to make their way up to a C-suite?
It's important. We talked about the tough work ethic, but it's also important not to lead with your emotions. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was in a senior staff meeting and I made a suggestion and it was just glossed over. The men seemed to have not heard me, but another man later then made the same suggestion I did. So rather than act in emotion, I simply said, John, and that's not,
Not his
real
name, right? Right.
John, thank you for reiterating the point I
Oh,
made
I
earlier.
love the verbiage there.
And I learned that at a conference. So yes,
Understanding
that is so
how to
important.
say without caving in and making yourself small.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. I like that. How about for you, Tasha?
I would tell anyone looking to join into this world of aviation to trust their superpower. It's going to be some challenging times. It may not go a smooth ride, but just commit to it and
I
you
see
will
what
excel.
you did there. I see what you did there. Not a smooth ride. I get it. I get it. Any other takeaways? A tough part that you hit that made you go, you know what? I'm going to break through this, and you were just tougher, stronger, and better for it.
Well, when I started, I had a person tell me that none of her bills were temporary, and that was a hit at me for taking a temporary position. I learned then that another person's weaknesses or demons are not mine. Some folks say, let your haters be your motivators. Hate doesn't motivate me. I thrive in love and sunshine. So I ignore all the hate and I just push through, and I've had to do that throughout my career.
I bet. And it's part of what you do now in your consulting space as well, right? Explain.
Yes. Well, I'm loving taking what I've learned after that 32-year career at the airport and now leveraging that in my own consulting business. And one of my favorite aspects of the business is big events. And we have a large one coming up with Joteka Edie as our keynote speaker.
With Win with Black Women. Yes, she was a guest here on the show.
Yeah, she is phenomenal. But my event is promoting unity among all the sororities in the Pan-Hellenic Council. All 4 of the African American sororities coming together for one cause with Joteka as our speaker. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm so excited about it.
Yes, it is. She's a powerful woman, a powerful leader. Natasha, for you, what's coming up in the space where you are working with girls and women? And you work, I should point out, you work with men as well.
I do. Yes. So, as I mentioned, I'm launching my nonprofit, Million Miles of Maryland. I'm looking forward to taking that to the next level. We'll be offering scholarships, some one-on-one counseling, mentorship, and also taking some kids and children up to do some flyovers in the LA area. So I'm really, really excited.
Wow,
Yes.
that is impressive. And I can't let this end without mentioning you're both mothers,
Yes.
right? I think so many times women think, well, something's going to have to be sacrificed, so I'm not going to be able to have the kids, or I'm not going to be able to be home for all of it. Just a word about balancing.
I'm so glad you said that. Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy said that no matter how successful you are in life, raising great, successful children is your biggest accomplishment. And so I say to women, single motherhood in a demanding career is not a balancing act. It's a choreographed dance.
I like that.
Sometimes life leads, sometimes you lead, but with the conviction of your passion in your job, your community of support, you can hear the music play for your ambitions and for your family.
I love it. I love it. We are out of time, but I know you're a mom too, and I know you have a lot of juggling to do. Ditto. Exactly. Like Ray. Auntie said that.
Right.
Thank you, ladies, for the work that you do in this industry and really inspiring women along the way. I appreciate having a chance to share your story. Yes, indeed. We will be right back.
The bird is watching too.
Knock out this last part here, and then we can take more pictures if you need be. She just had a flight to catch. Safe travels. I want to thank Tasha. I almost said Tasha Mack. Like, what are we doing? I want to thank Myrna White and Tasha Finez for showing all the girls out there the sky really is the limit. Not only are they game changers in the aviation industry, but they're also empowering generations of women to come. Thanks for watching. Bushita be the reason why someone smiles. I want to thank Myrna White and Tasha Finez for showing all the girls out there the sky really is the limit when it comes to your careers. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to be the reason why someone smiles today. Myrna White and Tasha Finez are pioneers in aviation, and they didn't even train in the cockpit. Hear why they're inspiring girls to take flight in their industry today on Porsche.
There's a new microphone over here, so you can leave it.
you're going to sit here, and you can put on this microphone.
Okay. No, it's hardwired, huh?
Yep.
Knock something over here.
Would one of you guys be able, if I'm not sure, I know we're looking at TriCaster, if the Federal Reserve meeting goes through, I think it's on 22. I could be wrong, but I think it's on 22. If it goes, can you just route it to the YouTube stream I currently have set up and then just hit live? It's on the federal interest rates update, so kind of a big deal, even though there's probably not going to be any change. Thank you so much. All right. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
What are we going to talk about?
Okay, so I figured I'll start off, and the idea is that this conversation would accompany me the after of your package.
Right.
So I would probably say just start right in, like this heartbreaking case, talk a little bit about the details. I'd kind of go through some of the stuff that may seem redundant having watched your package, but it's more to flesh out the overall conversation. So why was this child adopted to this family in the first place? We can kind of get into the advocacy and all that. Procedurally, a judge had to have signed off on this. So do we know the judge, what challenges did you run into on that side of things? And I'll just follow up. I'll take your lead after the questions I ask you, just kind of follow up and go back and forth in the story,
Okay.
some of the challenges you faced, that sort of thing.
And we're always with that camera.
Yep, we
All
look
right.
at that camera and it's just like having a discussion.
Should I pull up a little bit?
No, please, do what you need.
Pulled up a tad bit. There we go. Okay.
Get us back into Media Encoder, where we'll be recording. Are you ready for your vacation?
No, I wish I wasn't going because then I would not be in such a crunch. I wish it occurred to me to just sell my ticket because I just like it's putting me in such a crunch. The Dead and Company, and I've seen them like I can't even count the number of times
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
yeah. Yeah, I saw them at the Sphere last year. It was pretty incredible. I'm hoping they kind of mix it up. That it's not the same exact thing.
Oh, you saw him at the Sphere?
Yeah, I'm going to Las Vegas.
That's amazing.
I've lost count. I mean, I put that in my bio on Fox 5. I can't even count how many shows I've seen.
That's like your place.
Well, I guess. Yeah, she saw them when they were the real Grateful Dead. I only saw that one time. That was in high school, but I saw them when they were just the Dead, when they had Joan Osborne. Then I've seen them as Dead and Company. This might be like my 6th time. I'm not
That's
sure.
impressive.
No, it's really not. It's a waste of money.
You could do a TikTok or an Instagram where you just rate all the concerts you've been to and talk about what you liked and didn't and what's happened over the years.
Yeah. It would probably like date me if I start saying all the shows.
Okay.
Yeah, I go to see like people in their 70s.
That's exactly right.
He is incredible. He's what makes this show, because unlike Jerry Garcia, John Mayer is always sober. So every show is consistently good, Like the Grateful Dead was a crapshoot. You might go when Jerry's hungover and it sounds terrible. Oh, really? That'd been cool.
Like big at the time, and I was like,
Yeah, he's I'm not.
To who?
Bill and Phil. When I was in college,
Yeah.
I remember like they had $20 cover, and I was like, I'm not
Yeah. No, I didn't even stick around to see the John Mayer show. I just like, oh, maybe a little interview for our school program.
I have a friend and she saw Drake like multiple times for like $12, like back in Toledo when he like first was going around on tour. And I'm like, man, I can't even. That's crazy. Yeah. Okay, Johnny. So we will be. If you ever need to look at our shot, we are down here and we're over there in the preview window on TriCaster.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
And I guess I'll just kind of look at you and the
Yeah,
camera.
I like to have it like we're having a conversation, but then we sometimes engage the camera to
Right.
like bring people in, and you
Right.
can break that wall and address them and be like, if you guys have questions on this story or there's other things you'd like me to cover, send me an email, and I will pitch that to you at the end. If you haven't
Okay.
done it, I'll be like, if we want to cover, someone has story similar to this, or they want you to look into something, what's your email, Johnny? That sort of thing.
Okay.
It's like you're at a party. And
Yeah.
You got a person there. You're talking like in a crowd at the board. You're talking to her and talking to them. You're looking back and forth.
Right.
This person is a robot.
Yeah.
All right.
But we're
Okay.
gonna pretend that they.
Kinda like
Yeah.
you're on a set.
Right.
We're gonna pretend. All right. We have levels. Things are unmuted. We are good to go.
All right.
3, 2, 1. Heartbreaking case, Johnny. Incredible work. I want for our viewers, as we start this, we're going to have a discussion with Johnny about the story. I'm Ariel Onstadt, Johnny Edwards. So we have you here with us, and it's just a pleasure to be able to discuss your story in greater format like this. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
There are so many factors of this story that I think any person watching it would feel rightfully upset and angry at the situation in the system. As you were working through this, how did you navigate that to find out the truth and to figure out, hey, how do I tell this?
Well, much of what we have on this case came from either police early in the case or what came out in court last week, or talking in interviews with people that will agree to interviews. I mean, what we really want to see is in some records that under state law and federal law are just locked down. We don't know how the Shinleys were able to adopt this boy that they've horrifically admitted to abusing,
Yeah.
or his siblings. That would be in DFACS files. It would be in the adoption file, which is sealed. Even the prosecutor who prosecuted the Shinleys and has put them away for 40 years, she couldn't get these records. So it's a real mystery. I mean, this is a story about what we know and also about what we don't know.
I feel like so many investigations go just like that, right? For every question you answer, there are probably 5 that pop up that you want to answer. And so for those of you who are just joining our stream, or maybe you're just tuning in at this point, Johnny, can you give us an overview of that trial and what unfolded with Tyler and Krista Shindley and why this case was even brought in the first place?
Well, it sounds like, from what I can gather, the trial started with the defense saying that in the opening statements that they were overwhelmed, they wanted help, but they couldn't get help. But then when the state began their case and started, showing all the things that were done to this little boy and the people testifying of all the early warning signs they had seen, and it just became so just gut-wrenching and horrific. I think they decided to go ahead and plea, and they pled guilty to all the charges, including attempted murder. And, we saw in the sentencing, the judge just had absolutely no mercy. He told them he wishes he could do to them what they did to the victim, and he really threw the book at them. I mean, now they were facing a lot more than 40 years. I think they were facing perhaps a few hundred years, if you stack all the charges together. But 40 years is a lot, and I asked the district attorney why, if she could tell me, why do you think they decided to just cut the trial short and plead guilty? And she said because, in her words, that they are narcissistic and did not want these details out and were trying to preserve their image, and that when they saw how much media interest there was in this and that the whole world was watching, they decided to just cut it off.
Johnny, I want to kind of talk through a little bit about the details of those cases. So for those of you watching, a trigger warning for child abuse and some of the things we're about to discuss, because it is difficult. So when we watched that trial and when we talked through some of the things in your story, I think one of the things that struck me more than anything is the fact that this is two sets of twins that were adopted to this family. So he has his own biological siblings that are taking part in some of this abuse against him. These adoptive parents are able to coordinate this effort, and you see starvation. You see him being beaten. Why was he singled out from his other siblings? Do we know?
I asked the prosecutors that, and they said the reason was because he was not perfect, that they demanded perfection. Yes, there were two sets of twins. There were his younger siblings. They were biological siblings. I'm not sure if they were full siblings or there might have been some half mixed in there, but there was two that were, I think, 4 years younger than him, and then two that were a few years younger, 3 years younger. One of those sets of twins had a boy. The others were all girls. And you know, the allegation was coming from the school personnel and other people in the know, including the foster care agency that worked with them. They were saying that the parents wanted the twins, but didn't want him. And it's very strange because my understanding is that he came to the house first, but I think they kind of came in shifts, you know, a few weeks apart. So there really was just a gang up. We've seen this in other cases too over the years in other places in the country. Yeah, he was locked in his room. He was. They took the knobs off the hot water in the bathroom, so he had to take cold baths, bathe in the freezing cold water. They had the windows covered and screwed shut. The door, like I said, locked from the outside.
Mine is too.
Yours too? That's why I covered it all up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Their life. They had nice beds with toys and free run of the house. So, yeah, it was. And one of the stories they told about how, you know, it sounds like there was some indoctrination of the other kids to try to get them to take part in the abuse, the psychological torture. I assume that would make them somehow party to it. Like, for example, in one case, apparently there was a pool, and they threw a hot dog in the pool, and the little boy jumped in after it because he was hungry, but he didn't know how to swim. And so he was flailing and drowning and going around, but still trying to get to the hot dog. And they were all, you know, according to the DA, they were all laughing at him, the kids and the parents.
Yeah.
So, but you have to take that in context of what they say no. That they wanted to erase him from existence, and that they didn't get to this far on the trial, but they were planning to introduce evidence that the parents were going to move to Ohio. So the idea being they, you know, just sort of erase him from existence. These kids were not in school at the time. They even told me that the neighbors didn't even know there was this other son in the house. So the people right living nearby didn't even know that he existed.
And that's what's so incredible. When he was able to escape from this situation, he was able to, in his malnourished state, get out through a locked fence.
Right. There was a privacy fence with a gate, and he'd been left home alone. And apparently, understanding is that one of the children was supposed to lock that and might not have locked it all the way. And he, even in his weakened state, he was reportedly very close to death. He managed to somehow get on top of something and get over the fence and manipulate that lock to get it open. And then he was able to get out, and then he reached a neighbor who found him, and police were called, and the case unraveled, or the case laid out from there.
Right. And I think one of also just seeing the visible evidences of the abuse from the standpoint of, you have what is a 10-year-old boy, but you hear testimony of them describing him looking more like 6 years old because of how underweight he is. Just horrific. This played out. He was adopted, him and his siblings, in what, 2020?
2020.
And he escapes in 2023?
Right.
So it plays out over 3 years. How do we, looking at this situation, you have a foster organization like Families for Families that's advocating on these children's behalf and saying, you know, hey, I don't think that they should go to the Shinleys. I don't think that this family should have these children or should adopt them. But we see that this happens anyway. How does that happen in this situation?
Well, it happened because these defects complaints that were going to the state's child welfare agency were being ruled unfounded. I think one example I heard about in my interviews was that there was a complaint that he'd gone to school without food with an empty lunchbox, but it turned out in the investigation he'd eaten his lunch on the bus on the way to school. So that's just one that I know of. I don't really know the content and I can't verify that, but that's just what I was told. So, so DFACS had apparently done investigations of the DA's office.
And real quick, for those who are unaware, DFACS is Department of Family and Children's Services.
Right. Yeah, that's they're under the Department of Human Services. They're they're the state's child welfare agency. They deal with things like adoption, foster children, and abuse complaints. And but there was the DA's office said they know of 3 complaints at least that were all unfounded. Now, Families for Families had recruited the Shinleys through their church to be foster parents, and they were, they're a group that contracts with the state to provide support for foster families. And the director and the founder of Families for Families, Wayne Noggle, told me in an interview that the boy had said something about not feeling safe. And I think they were observing the same thing that the school was observing, that the parents seemed to want